Well, in the race to replace retiring U.S. Senator George Voinovich, the debate is focused on the issues facing your family: getting a job, keeping a job, finding good health care. I sat down with the Republican candidate in that race, Rob Portman, earlier this week. Thank you so much for being with us today, U.S. Senate candidate Rob Portman.
Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. I want to get straight to an issue that's affecting a young man that we spoke with today. His name's Brett Wade. He does have a pre-existing condition, has a disability, has already racked up $17,000 in medical bills, and here's what he said to us.
Now I can't get decent health coverage and I've accumulated all this debt, so that's a big problem for me. There has to be a change in the laws.
You said that you support repealing the health care reform passed this summer. What do you say to someone like Brett?
Well, I've also said all along that I support prohibiting, excluding people for pre-existing conditions because that's not fair. He may have a genetic issue, he may have some other issue that has followed him through his life, and he can't get health care insurance, and so I think there needs to be legislation that deals with that. And by the way, there's a much better way to do it, I think, than in the health care legislation by setting up state pools to deal with people with pre-existing conditions. It would be less expensive for the health care system, and I think it would be better for a guy like Brett.
Would you totally repeal what has been passed and replace it with something else? What would be a better system?
Yeah, our current health care system is broken, in my view. And, some people think the status quo is okay. I don't think it's working. In fact, I met this morning with a group of physicians and hospital administrators here in Columbus. We had an excellent roundtable to talk about some of the challenges that the Columbus community faces. This is through the Ohio State Medical Association, which has endorsed me for the U.S. Senate because they agree with me that the current healthcare system is not working, but that the new legislation, in some respects, makes it worse. So I would replace what was passed with something that works better for Ohio to get the costs of healthcare down. As you know, as people are looking at this health care bill, more and more realizing that it actually increases the cost of health care rather than decreasing it, which is one of the major issues in terms of access, in terms of being sure that we can afford the health care system we have. And I would do much more in terms of getting those costs down by increasing competition with insurance companies, more transparency, more health information to be shared. We talked a lot about that this morning, where you increase quality and cost, get the costs down, and also by dealing with these frivolous lawsuits that are right now costing all of us billions of dollars, some say over $200 billion a year in additional defensive medicine costs. So there are better ways to get at a system that is broken.
I want to switch gears and talk about jobs, because that seems to be the #1 issue that's on everyone's mind every time we go out and talk about this. Your critics say that during your time in Washington, you supported trade policies that shipped Ohio jobs overseas. Ohioans are out of work because of the decisions you made. Is that true?
No. In fact, when I was the trade representative for about a year, we increased exports, which is good for Ohio, and increased enforcement. So there's a level playing field. If there's a level playing field, exports are very, very good for Ohio. 25% of manufacturing jobs in Ohio now are export jobs. 1 out of every 3 acres that's planted in Ohio by our farmers is now planted for export. These are not only jobs that we need, but they're good paying jobs, better paying jobs than most. And my concern about what my opponent is saying is he wants to take a protectionist view that's going to have Ohio falling even further behind. We've lost 400,000 jobs in Ohio in the last 3.5 years, while my opponent has been lieutenant governor and director of development in Ohio. It's time for a change. It's time for a change and a fresh approach to grow jobs, and part of that is by expanding exports.
You do have this Portman plan for jobs. It's on your website.
Yep.
Folks can go look at it. 6 different tenets. What do you think is the most important one? If you are elected, what is the first thing that you do?
Yeah. Well, thanks for mentioning the Portman plan for jobs. Check it out at robportman.com. Give us your thoughts. It's about a year old now, but it's a result of going to every one of Ohio's 88 counties, talking to small business owners, talking to workers, talking to economic development professionals, and coming up with some great ideas. The one that I think is most important right now is to redirect the stimulus funding towards something that will create jobs and private sector jobs here in Ohio immediately, and that's by having a 1-year holiday from the payroll tax. That's something that everybody pays as a worker, therefore more money in the pockets of Ohioans to be able to get the economy moving, and it's something that small businesses are all paying their half of, which enables them to have more capital to be able to invest in their businesses and get jobs going again. And that's what I've heard from a lot of people, is that alone would help get Ohio back on track in a lot of ways. There are also, as you say, 6 other principles and a lot of other proposals there that help small business, but I think that really is the backbone of Ohio's economy. Small businesses are falling behind. I talk to small business owners a lot who tell me, among other things, the health care legislation is making it harder to hire somebody. Last week I was at a factory in the Youngstown area where an employer said, I'm not going to hire somebody new, even though I've got some more business coming in now. And this is a guy who unfortunately had to lay off a bunch of people over the last couple of years. He said, because of the health care costs, I'm going to do more with overtime, pay time and a half, because I don't want to bring somebody on because the health care costs are so high. So it's a reason to get at, as we said earlier, cost containment in health care to be sure that we have the opportunity to create jobs here in Ohio.
All right, final question now. You're ahead in the polls by about 13 points. Is it easy street, or are you still working hard?
We're still working very hard. I don't pay much attention to the polls. I didn't when we were behind, and I don't now that we're ahead. We're going to work right through November 2nd because this election is just too important. I really think a lot's at stake this year, and a lot's at stake for Ohio. Again, Ohio continues to fall behind. We continue to lose jobs, lose opportunity. Our young people aren't choosing to stay here. I got 3 kids. I want them to have a future here in Ohio. So we're going to work very hard right till the end. And for folks who are watching today, I hope you're registered to vote. I hope you'll get out to vote. People need to be engaged this year because these issues affect every single one of us.
Okay. Rob Portman, thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Emily.
Now, Portman's opponent, Democrat Lee Fisher, was our guest here on Your Voice last month. You can see his full interview under the Your Voice tab on our website. Bob.
All right, Emily, still ahead on Your Voice.